What's in the box?
I said you give me the
What's in
gun.
the box?
Hello and welcome. So this week, if you've been watching the Neural DSP camp, you'd know that there has been a pretty extensive ad campaign teasing a new product coming soon, right? The classic Neural DSP soon. I love what they've done here. I love the fact that they leaned into the whole idea of we use soon too often, and the scene really sees that from our products and launches. They're not taking themselves very serious with some of this, which personally I think is great, and that's also another big point of contention. But be that as it may, you're not here for necessarily hearing just my opinion. You also want to know a little bit more about the device. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through, I'm going to kick the tires. I'm going to let you a little bit more about what I've learned in the last 24 hours in working with this and kind of getting to know it a little bit more. And then I'll finally give you some of my basic thoughts on who I think this product is built for and who I think might want to steer clear if they're already satisfied with products that they already have. Okay, so we'll go through a little bit of that too. What you can also expect after this video is I do plan to have a few other supplementary videos that are going to go through kind of showing you how to use this as an audio interface and interface with a DAW and be able to record music, be able to add your own captures, be able to capture your own gear and be able to use that entire method of doing that with the Nano Cortex. We're going to go through all that in supplementary videos. So for now, this is simply just going to be an introduction, kicking the tires, and then giving you some of my initial thoughts over the last 24 hours. So let's go check it out. All right, let's take a brief walk through the I/O available in the Nano Cortex. Starting with input, you have a singular mono input and output, stereo output. You have 1 and 2, left and right, with the second being used as well for capture out. So as part of your cabling methodology, when you're going to be capturing your cabs or pedals or cab IRs, whatever, you're going to be using a TRS cable in output 2 as part of that method to be able to capture out, okay? Ground lift, you have dirty power, maybe a little bit of noise in one of your cables. This should hopefully take and alleviate some of that sound from your output so you don't have that noise in there. Next, you have a singular 1/4 inch for expression and MIDI. So if you're going to use expression pedal or send MIDI signals to the device, you can use a TRS cable to be able to do that here. Stereo headphones, you have stereo headphone jack and a dedicated volume control in the back, which is pretty nice. I like having the dedicated volume control. It's pretty cool. Next, USB-C. So a couple things you can do here, and that leads me to power as well. So USB-C, you can either power the device using 5 volt, okay, on a standard, USB-C accessory. You can send your power directly to that device, or you can use the dedicated power input. So that's, I believe it's ground center. It's either a 9 to 12 volt, and you need at least 600 milliamps. So that's what you need if you want to use dedicated power, and you're not going to use USB for that power. USB-C is also used to be able to access the audio interface of the Nano Cortex. So you'll be wiring up with USB-C and then going to your computer to be able to use this device as an audio in and out if you so choose to be able to do that with your DAW. Let's see. Also, you have on the right panel a capture input. So if you're going to be using, again, the capture methodologies for neural captures of any sort or cab IR, you're going to be using the right panel to have your capture input, as well as the capture boost. There's a dedicated button that will do a plus 26 dB boost for that capture input. So just in case you need to have any boosting of that signal to get a little bit cleaner, especially for some pedals and maybe some of those cleaner amps as well. This might help you to be able to get a little bit more normalized version of a capture. All right, now we'll take a walk through the controls available to you on your Nano Cortex. The first main thing I want to point out is the LEDs, the usage of the LED rings. Pretty cool, pretty reminiscent of the dark glass preamps, the most recent ones that they've been putting out. I'm all here for it. There's multiple colors of LED in there too, depending on the context, and in turning the knob, you could definitely see at a very easy glance what your configuration is in any given parameter, which is pretty cool. But anyways, let's step through some of these knobs. I'll give you some basics of what they do, and then we'll just move on to signal chain. So controls. Start with the most basic. tone shaping controls, your gain, which is your control of your gain from 0 to 11, right? So that's going to be basically your distortion that you're going to get off of the gain level at the input of your neural capture. Next is bass, mid, and treble frequencies. Okay, so pretty obvious, right? Bass, mid, and treble. Amount is something kind of interesting. So depending on the effect that you're picking up, which there is 5 effects in total, both pre and post amp, okay, that are going to be used to be able to control different parameters. And we'll go through in those in just a minute. But your amount is going to be depending on the context of that effect, controlling the specific parameter that it's dedicated to. Finally, level. Level is going to be your overall master volume control. Okay, so the louder you have the level, the more your volume is going to come out of the output. So let's take a look at effects, okay? And we'll get a little bit more into what effects are available, and then I'll touch back on that amount knob, and that'll make a little bit more sense to you. So effects, your effects button is right here, okay? And you have 5 effects, as I alluded to. You have 2 preamp and you have 3 post, okay, that you can use to be able to do this. So let's walk through the 5. And those 5, by the way, are represented on the actual Nano Cortex by the 5 LEDs that you see here, right next to this. So in order, left to right, those 5 LEDs represent noise gate, transpose, modulation, delay, and reverb. Okay, with noise gate and transpose being pre-capture, pre-neural capture, okay, and modulation, delay, and reverb being post. That's where they fall in the signal chain. And we'll talk signal chain a little bit later on too. But that's kind of important to know because that's going to change the context of the amount knob. And that's what I was just mentioning earlier. So if you're using the noise gate, okay, so if I have noise gate selected, which by the way, you can tell which effect you have selected on this interface by whichever one is blinking. So as I mentioned, left to right, we have those 5, right? So in the middle, you have the 3rd LED that's flashing. So that means modulation is currently what we would be controlling with the mount. So if I turn to this, I would be changing the value of modulation, okay? Now, if I tap this a couple times more, I'm going to be right at the end on the 5th one. So now I'd be controlling reverb. I'd be turning that on and off. So let me pull my guitar out really quick, and I just want to strum around a little bit and show you that we're altering the sound here a little bit. Okay, so let's take a look. Right now, I am altering reverb. So let's turn that back, and now we will go back again to the 3rd one, which is modulation, right? And let's turn modulation all the way off. Now let's turn it all the way up. All right, so as you can see in different cases, this is going to do something different. Now, as I mentioned, the 3 post capture controls, and that's your modulation, your delay, and your reverb, right? That's going to be controlling mix. Now let's get to, there's the first one flashing. Let's get to the noise gate. So on your noise gate, your amount knob is going to control your amount of cut that you're going to have with your noise gate, your control threshold, okay? And your transpose, if you click to your second one there, that's going to control your semitone. The transpose feature is set to currently your pitch, essentially. As you can hear, that made a change to the pitch in the same chord that I'm playing, okay? Okay, well, let's get into talking about the foot switches next, okay? So you have 2 foot switches here, 1 and 2. This is kind of interesting how the configuration works on the Nano Cortex. So I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory really quick before I jump into these foot switches because it becomes a little important for you to know, okay? So you can have 25 presets saved to your device, okay? But you can only have 4 assigned to foot switch switchable presets. Okay, so that is 1A and 1B, and that's 1 and 2 taps here, and 2A, 2B, which is 2 on this foot switch. Okay, so you can tell you're on A or B or 1 and 2, depending on which way you want to look at it. Okay, so for example, foot switch 1, if I want to be on 1A, the amber light will designate that I'm on 1A now by clicking this down. Foot switch 1 down will give me 1A. Doing this again, and you'll see it turn to purple instead of amber now. That means I'm on 1B. So whatever of the 25 of presets that I have on the actual device's memory itself, if I've designated 1A out of those 25 to be, say a clean or something like that, then if it's selected in the amber, that would be 1A, that would be my clean preset. And if I have, say, a dirty like Diesel or something like that configuration and neural capture in a preset that I have selected for 1B, then if I click this again, and you see that turn to that kind of a purplish color, that means that we are in 1B. And you could tell that because that is the indicator that's over this foot switch. Now, if I do the exact same thing on the second foot switch, amber means I'm on 2A of whatever I have assigned to that value of the 25 presets. And clicking it again will give me the purple on this side on foot switch 2, which is going to mean that now I'm on 2B. Okay. Now, there is other controls, just like in the Quad Cortex, if you're familiar with the Quad Cortex. There is other controls as well here. Actually, you know what? Before I move on, I want to show you really fast the fact that you can switch between these presets without any audio cut. I think that's kind of important too for again, people coming from the Quad Cortex world. This is something that's a little different between these devices, okay? So the main thing I want you to take away from demonstrating this to you is there is 0 audio delay switching between presets. So there is no audio cut whatsoever. It is seamless, it buffers, it goes straight through to that next preset. And yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit on why that's capable of being able to do this versus what you may have been previously experiencing if you're coming from the Quad Cortex in switching presets. Okay, but at any rate, let's get into taking a look at the dial controls on these foot switches. Okay, this is an important part of being able to modify some values on your Nano Cortex here. So first of all, on foot switch 1, if we use the rotary dial, okay, that rotary dial is actually going to be cycling through the different neural captures that you have available. So in total, written to your device, you can have 25 neural captures, okay? And remember, neural captures are a few different things, right? They're generally either an amp or it's an amp and cab combo or something of the sort, okay? So as you either have the presets that preset neural captures that are provided by Neural DSP, you can use those as your 25 that you have available. You can cycle those in with others that you download from Cortex Cloud. So you can actually go out there and have other folks' neural captures be able to download to the device and be able to use those as well as your own. So you can capture your own and write those and being able to have those cycle through and be available here too. The interface is kind of unique with this. So there's very familiar 5 LEDs right there, the tiny little pinhole looking ones, okay? So if I turn foot switch 1, I am actually cycling through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 neural captures in and across 5 different banks. So as you'll see, bank is right there. And this is the second bank because I'm on the second LED that's lit, which means that if I am cycling through, turning this knob, okay, I'm starting with 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the available neural captures, respectively, okay? So let me just give you a little bit of noise here on the guitar so you can tell that I'm changing through these captures in real time. So let's actually go through the bank. I'm going to go through all the way to 1. I want to start at the beginning really quick just to show you this, okay? So bank 1, neural capture 1. turn this. Now we're on 2, neural capture 2. 3. Oh, sorry, I jumped the 4. There we go, there's 3. Five, and so on. So the order of these neural captures, at least if you're talking about the defaults from Neural DSP on the device, okay, goes 1, 2, 3, and 4, going from the cleanest to the most distorted. Okay, so things you're going to find in bank 1 through 5 is going to be the cleanest of their kind of like clean tones and captures for clean amps, okay? And then you step up through there until you hit into 4, which gets into a lot more of their gainier amplifiers. So let me go back to 1 here just so we have that. You can hear that's a lot more distortion happening, right? So a lot more distortion happening with the 5th bank being dedicated to bass tones. Okay, so if you're a bassist and you wanted to start to use this, bank 5 is the defaults as they're defaultly configured, right? To be able to give you 5 neural captures that are meant specifically for the bass. Obviously, I'm playing guitar, but if I go to one of the cleaner ones, so yeah, that's how you can be able to switch through your different neural captures on the fly by using a mixture of bank and turning the knob on foot switch 1. Okay. Same kind of behavior here on foot switch 2, except for you're going to be able to cycle through 5 of the 10 that can be stored on the device cab IRs. So this is where you're going to be making changes to the impulse response that's going to be used as a cabinet. Okay. Now, let me try to find, I think the best way I'm probably going to be able to show you this is to go into one of the more distorted ones of these, because I think that's the easiest for me to be able to show you that tone difference when I'm swapping through these cabinets. Okay. So here, I'm going to just keep playing for a moment here, and I'll keep cycling through the cabs so you can hear the difference between that tone. Okay. Now here's one more thing that's cool. If you turn it once more past either 1 or 5, you'll see no LEDs lit. When that's the case, there's actually no cab IR being used. There's no impulse response. So you get like just whatever the neural capture has, which I know sounds really staticky and kind of crap because that's the way it would sound from the amp. And with the specific neural capture that we're using right now, there's no cab IR baked into that neural capture. It's just an amp basically. So that's why it kind of sounds staticky and like that, which is why you need an IR. But in case you needed to bypass using the IR, if you're using a neural capture that already has a cabinet included, this is how you can bypass it to be able to make that be used. So turning foot switch 2 left and right is going to cycle through your different IRs. Let's go through the signal chain now. This is kind of an interesting topic. This is a fixed signal chain. You've heard me say this a few times. So what does this mean? It means that there really isn't an ability to move, say, for example, a pedal, like modulation or something like that. I can't move it from the positioning of which it's affixed in the signal chain as my signal goes through from input to output. Okay, on the Nano Cortex, it's fixed. It's in place. I can just basically turn it on and off, and then I have the ability to control it as I want to with the different parameters that are able to be set there. But I can only turn it on and off. I can't remove it from the signal chain, and I can't place it somewhere else in the signal chain than where it's located currently. Okay, so that's one of the biggest differences between the Nano Cortex and the Quad Cortex when it comes to how you are able to place devices and do things like that. So that's a big deal, okay? Something else to mention, because of the fact that this device is fixed, okay, with the fixed signal chain, you have every capture, neural capture, and effect loaded into memory when the device starts. So everything is loaded in the background. Even if it's bypassed in whatever preset you're using, it's there, it's running, it's loaded, which is helpful because it gets you to the point where you don't have some of the things like, for example, if I go back to the Quad Cortex again and mention that, say, for example, changing presets, how you have that slight auditory hiccup where there's just no audio and then it comes back again when you change between those presets. It's because it's loading all the devices in the grid into their different locations and basically configuring all of them to make that happen. And there's a slight delay in its ability to actually load those versus getting audio processed through it. With the Nano Cortex, that's not the case. Everything's loaded into memory all the time. All you're doing is simply turning things on and off and controlling which one is going to have that sound playing at any given time, given the configuration changes that you're making on the device itself. Okay, so that's a big difference. So that's what it means by a fixed signal chain. Okay, so let's take a look at the signal chain order. I want to walk through specifically what is going on in there from input to output, so you have a better understanding of what that order is. Okay, so first things first that you're going to hit as soon as your signal comes in through the input, it's going to hit the noise gate. Okay, and obviously what the noise gate is going to do, it's going to help you tighten up your tone. You can do a little bit more control of your cutoff of where noise is going to happen. So essentially, like if you have a little bit more, this is usually a lot more akin to high gain amps. When you have a high gain amp, it means that everything is going to be amplified a lot harsher, and you're going to hear a lot of the ambient noise from your pickup a lot easier. So that noise ratio can be changed given a threshold, right? To be able to have more or less of that, depending on what you have your noise gate set at. So that's what a noise gate is going to be able to give you in this case. Transpose is basically a pitch shifter. It gives you the ability to make a couple of changes within your pitch. You can go up and down semitone of your tones, of your actual pitch itself, to be able to make those things happen, up or down, plus or minus 12. And then some flavoring of exactly how direct you want those things to be. Okay, so we have noise gate, we have transpose. Now we have your neural captures. Okay, so all of the neural captures, your amplifiers or your amplifier cab combos, okay, are going to be in those captures. So your signal so far has gone from input, noise gate, transpose, neural capture, which you can essentially think of as your amp, okay, and then everything else past that is post FX. Okay, so that's essentially like in the effects loop of your amp at this point, and that would be modulation, delay, and reverb, and then output. So that's the exact configuration of your signal chain on the Nano Cortex. I want to briefly now touch upon the application, the Bluetooth app that you can use on your iOS and Android devices to be able to control your Nano Cortex. I'm going to do a little bit of a screen cap here just so I can kind of show you from my iPad what I'm looking at as we kind of walk through and talk about this. So I have Bluetooth enabled. I've paired the application to the Nano Cortex. It's now running. And basically, this is what you're going to be greeted with when it comes to the interface of the device. You can see the basics of the interface. Any of the different changes that you're making will be present, especially on the LED little rings here. So if you're dragging around and making changes, okay, on any of these given knobs, you're in real time making those changes on the device. So if you watch, for example, a mount, I'm gonna turn a mount all the way down and you'll see that happened directly on the device very quickly too. There's little to no delay here. And if I drag all the way up, then it turns it all the way up. And obviously I can change my parameters to flavor, right? So I have all of the ability to make any of the physical changes that I'd be making on those knobs directly from the app here. Next, if I go down a little bit more, as I've pointed out to you, your 4 different presets, right? 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B. I have the control over those presets here. So I can select any of those 4 presets that I have in those banks to be able to choose out of the 25 that are available on my actual device itself. Now, on your Cortex cloud, one thing I want to point out is you can have 256 neural captures be there. Okay, so you can create 256 neural captures. You can also have 256 presets that are currently available to you. So that's pretty cool. That gives you the ability to have all of those stored in Cortex control here in the Cortex app. And you can make changes and use them any way you like, so long as you're paired with the app. So right now, if I go to all presets, these are the basic ones that came with the device. Okay, so these are all of the presets, and then there's lots of banks left for things that I haven't put into the app yet. Okay, but what I wanted to show you is you can step through, and as long as you're connected with Bluetooth, I can use any of the presets that are loaded here. Same with any of the neural captures. And if I click it immediately, the device now has it running, and you'll see red on this this little light here. The red means that you're dealing with something that isn't actually set on the device itself, and instead has been sent from the app. Okay, so in that case, let's say you had a preset beyond the 25 you have written to the actual device itself here. If you make a change and actually have stomped that here, then it's going to say, hey, that's not a default preset. That's not something that I can actually use here if you disconnect from the app. And that's kind of what they're letting you know. Now, if I wanted to say, assign this to a preset, I could just click those little ellipses at the edge here, right? And I can assign to a foot switch. And at that point, then I can do 1A, 1B, 2A, or 2B. And that would be what this preset would then be triggering, okay, if I was to use that. And also, obviously, too, you have delete preset and rename preset, which is pretty cool. So, but those are very basic, right? So you can see the 4 that I have selected there for my presets. And like I said, anytime you're working with the Cortex Cloud and downloading any of these, or maybe you download a lot of them and you don't want them anymore, you can delete them from here too. This is just your interface to be able to deal with presets. Now, if I move on a little bit more here, I'll now see my neural captures. Same deal with the neural captures. You have up to 256 that you could have in your Cortex Cloud directly, but you can only have 25 of them actually on the device in those 5 banks that we just covered a little bit ago. All right, so if I click on any of these, I can make those same changes. And if you're watching the banks and where we're at here, you can totally see that making those changes is going to make that happen. Same with clicking show banks. You can actually see, here's bank 1 through 5, and here's bank 2, 6 through 10, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so this is how you can control those banks and the bank options that you have physically there to be able to make those controls with. Next, your cab and IR captures. You have your 5 defaults that you have here. Okay. And again, if you click either the power or the actual name itself, you could turn this on or off. So if you have a neural capture that already had an IR available, or if you're running this out to a power amp, it's going to have an actual cab that you're going to be playing through. You can disable here and make that happen. Okay. And then finally, your effects. As I mentioned, you have 2 pre and 3 post effects. This is where you can select those, and then you can make your configuration changes and obviously save and turn on and off. So you can activate, deactivate, and make those changes directly on the app here. And any of those changes, as you can obviously tell from a lot of things, are going to be replicated to the device, and you'll see the different patterns of light and things change to be able to tell you that these things are activated or deactivated. Finally, if you go over from this area to library, you can start to see your different configurations and things that you have available to you through your Cortex Cloud account. Okay, so if you have more of your either your captured impulse responses or ones that you've uploaded to the Cortex Cloud, you can download those here, and you can have a certain amount of them. So as you can see here, Nano Cortex can store up to 256 impulse responses, as I mentioned earlier. In addition to your 25 neural captures, 5 slots each, and 5 captured banks, so 25 in total. Your Nano Cortex can also store up to 256 captures that can be loaded via the virtual app here. So if you're using this app, you can have 256 of those available throughout the Cortex Cloud. And as long as you use the app, you can beam them basically to your Nano Cortex without having to write those directly to the device. So if you're doing some practice or anything like that, this enables you to be able to make those changes and change them out on the fly. So if you're trying to audition some new IRs and things before you go making changes to your device, this is the perfect way to be able to do that without having any penalty, because you can simply just not save any of those changes and not see that actually make a difference with your pedals memory, which is pretty neat. Finally, I will make a quick mention here that earlier when I used the app and initially connected, I had a message telling me, hey, you have a firmware update. Okay. Let me stop this recording while I'm talking here. So you have a firmware update. You should do that. It was 1.0.0, I think. So it's probably like their day one, kind of rev patch to be able to make those things happen. So basically you have to already be connected to the pedal with Bluetooth. It showed that I had an update in the app. I clicked, yeah, okay, update. And basically it just told me, don't make any changes to the device. Don't unplug any inputs or plug anything in. Don't make any changes to your power, to your USB, anything of the sort. Just leave the pedal exactly as it is, and then let the update complete. Of which I did. I turned it on, left it there, and didn't touch it. I was using a brand new iPad mini here with iOS 18 on it, freshly installed today. And yeah, the firmware update failed 5 times in a row. You got all the way to the very end saying, okay, now we're going to send it to the device. That just would sit there for a moment and then say failed, retry. So I did it 4 times on the iPad in a row. Power cycled on the second time of the actual device itself and restarted the iPad. No go. Didn't work. Didn't make any difference whatsoever. It just failed every time at the exact same spot. It took about 6 minutes each time to get there, and then it just wouldn't work. So I switched to my Android phone, my Fold 6, okay? And I ran the update again after I paired on the Cortex app. It did the exact same thing and failed. So I don't know why I did it again, because I was just like, at that point thinking, I should just wait for a little while and this probably just isn't worth it. But I tried one more time on my phone. Didn't do anything special. I wasn't far away. I'm as close right now as I was then to it, okay? Ran the update one more time. The 6th time was the charm. It went through successfully. Things worked the way I was expecting. But yeah, at any rate, it finally went through. Everything was successful there. No issues. The device worked just fine before the update, and I really don't see anything noticeable here. I didn't look through the patch notes either yet, but yeah, don't be afraid to update it if you do buy one of these and you need to do it day one. Just know that if it fails the first time, you might just have to try a couple more times. Like, I don't really have anything else to tell you at this point, but if I hear anything else about that problem, I'll mention it on the channel. All right, so who is the Nano Cortex for? I think that's the $1 million question that a lot of folks have. And there's been much contention, as I mentioned earlier, in different forums about. There's a couple different specific use cases that I think that Neural was aiming at with the Nano Cortex. One is someone that's new to playing the instruments, either guitar, bass, whatever. And I think they were very strategic on making sure that they included the bass and had that a little bit more forward and front and center, because they're trying to capture a little bit more of that market, knowing that on the horizon, you're going to have some of those most coveted plugins that they've had in the past have support on the Quad Cortex. Undoubtedly, those same plugin and at least neural captures and things of the sort, I think are going to make it to this Nano Cortex fast.
Yes.
I'll be honest with you, in the next couple of days, I'm going to be taking my own patches and trying to actually capture my own neural captures to do exactly that, to bring them to the device. And if I'm able to do that, I'll definitely have another video that's going to walk through that process and what the results are. If I'm able to make that happen, quite frankly, this is a really solid device that can give bassists the ability to really have some of these things out on the road without having that really steep price tag, which is cool. I think for bass, this could be nice. Now, you're going to have some more challenges when it comes to maybe having the slightly better and more controlled compressors and things that especially modern metal bassists really need. I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing that here, and it's not really something that's easy to be captured by neural captures. So you're going to have supplementary pedals that you're going to use and complement with the Nano Cortex if you're going to use it. Doesn't mean that it's not a good device for that. It just means that there's going to be some supplement. Really, I think that's the core that I want to mention too, is beyond new guitarists. And I was leaning a little bit more into the bassist. Standard guitarist, the same applies. It's going to be the same deal. I think you could get started a lot easier as a guitarist versus a bassist here. If you're not a modern metal bassist, then I think this gives you plenty of headroom to be able to work with as well. But again, if you're a person that really wants to use a lot of effects and wants to do that, there's going to need to be a complement of other things on your pedal board besides the Nano Cortex. This isn't going to be an all-in-one solution. And I'll be honest with you, in my opinion, compared to where a lot of the pricing points are for other devices, this is a little bit of a point of contention. Now, if I compare the Nano Cortex at what, $600 compared to the Quad Cortex, which is about $1,600 right now. Do I feel like you get your money's worth? Should you have a few more effects or doing something like that? Yes, I do. I think you get your money's worth. If I'm comparing price to price feature to feature, I think you do get your money's worth. But again, what are your expectations? If your expectations are that this was going to be Quad Cortex 2, it is not. It is not at all. It's a completely different thing. It really is. You have some common elements that are sharing between those two platforms, but at the end of the day, this is a very different product. Just at the core of having this be a fixed signal product, that completely changes the nature of how you're going to interface with it and what you're doing. The technology is entirely different. It works differently. It's not going to be your Quad Cortex. It's not going to work the same way. I think some of the interfaces are going to get similar, but it's not going to work the same way. Who else is this made for? I think this is made for touring musicians that want to be able to have access to some basics that they can continue to write songs with in the tour bus, or be able to be in a practice room and start to write some riffs and do some practice warm-ups and be able to work on some of those things. This is a fantastic platform for that. I harken back to Gojira talking about how they had their stealth series and we're using the 100-watt amps out on stage, and they're like, yeah, this is awesome, but then we're on the road so much that when we're wanting to practice and write riffs and do things in the practice rooms every day when we're in a different location, when we roll off the tour bus, we can't be using those 100-watt amps. They're just not practical. We can't lug around all that gear and try to make all that stuff work. So they're using the little lunch pail version of the smaller wattage version of the same thing. It said, this gets us everywhere we need to be. We don't need a lot of effects with it. This just gets us the core tone that we're used to, that we can translate all of these riffs and things like that too. The way I look at it is this would be a continuation of that. You can now model that exact lunch pail, put it onto, or the 100-watt for that matter, and put it onto the Nano Cortex, and you can have it available to you anywhere. You could have that out to FR speakers in a practice room and totally make it loud as you want and have it sound like a wall of sound. You can use those headphones and be quiet as a church mouse while you're playing and being able to do those things too and have that same sound, that same effect. Everything will be the same. You're just not going to have as much access to those effects. So that brings me to the final part. How important are effects to your overall performance with what you're doing? If they're important and you need them to be an all-in-one solution, Nano Cortex isn't going to be it. It's never going to be it. Even with updates, it's not going to be. Now, I think you are going to have the potential of having some more modulation, right? And a couple other types of reverb and potentially delays at your disposal that you'll have to choose between. But I'll be honest with you, besides that, you're never going to have more devices be activated at any given time to modify that signal chain. I just don't think it's going to happen. This device is very dependent on that fixed signal chain. So I think it's always going to be there. Finally, I think for folks that require a lot of IO options, the same way that you have your IO options and all of your kind of a la carte changes you could do to input and output on the Quad Cortex, you don't have that here on the Nano Cortex. It's a small form factor. It doesn't have that many IO solutions, right? So if that's what you really need and you're concerned about it, I think there's plenty of ways you can get there using supplementary, items. Either, maybe being able to run your output to an FR speaker as a monitor on stage, and then looping that FR output from the back of that cab and sending that to like front of house, so you can split your sound out and still be able to do that. That's one of the big things I've been hearing is the IO selection. Like, I can send to output, so what if I want to use a monitor and I want to send to front of house? How the heck do I do it? I think you have to get a little creative if you're going to use this on stage for that. But again, let's be fair, at price point, this is not something I necessarily would expect the Nano Cortex to be able to solve for. Would it be nice? Sure. Would it add more complexity and honestly more price? Yeah. Do you want to pay more than $600 for this? Probably not. So there's a lot to think about here, and I get it. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. These are some of mine. These are some of my initial thoughts. That's enough for me for now. I want to spend some more time with the unit. I want to make some more videos on specific topics so that way we can walk through this. And maybe I'll do another kind of like retrospective on the at the end of that video series, just to let you know some of my final thoughts after working with the device for a couple weeks. After the first 24 hours, though, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I actually really like it. I do. I don't love the interface of the Cortex app itself. It's okay, not the best. At the same time, I don't necessarily expect the same thing as what I get on Cortex Control. I think it would be cool if you had that, but what would you do with Cortex Control, the fixed signal chain? Most of that interface is completely different. There's not really a usage for it. So I don't know what I would want, but I think there could be a little bit more polish on the Cortex app. I'll be honest with you, I've always felt this way on Cortex Cloud as well. I don't necessarily love that web interface. I think it could get overhauled. So I think there's some work to do on those apps. Are they usable though? Absolutely. Do I think it's a terrible experience? No, I just don't think it's as good as it could be, okay? I'm critical of these things. My career is in IT first and music second. So I'm a little bit more critical than maybe some folks would be on that as well. But anyways, these are some of my thoughts. I'm going to come back to you with more of my thoughts, but I appreciate the device as it sits right now. I've had fun with it. This has been fun kind of exploring and being able to have the build up. Again, thanks for Sweetwater getting it to me so quickly. That was really cool. And yeah, let's go make some other videos with this thing and then see what it can do. Till next time, see ya.